Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Future Strike. I am Cliff, and
I'm Spencer. Hello.
hello, welcome back to Future Strike. Today, we are going to be doing an influences episode. In these episodes, we are going to be discussing some of the games that inspire us. And today, we are starting with two classics, Final Fight and Street Fighter 2. So, Final Fight.
Yeah,
Do you remember like the first time you saw or played that game?
I believe so. The memories I have of, yeah, most of my like early arcade, but I think Final Fight in particular, there was this place, this sports bar in Chicago or in the Chicago area called Sluggers. And it was like, upstairs was like the restaurant and downstairs was this arcade. And I have this memory, like, even of actually where it was there. In any case, I remember seeing the Final Fight cabinet.
Was it on a Neo Geo or
No, no, yeah, it wasn't. It wasn't in the Neo Geo
it was
group.
its own?
It was its own standalone thing. But yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what I was when I first saw and played it. And actually, I remember too the death screen when you get the like you have the dynamite strapped to your chest. That
Yeah,
was like, I mean, because of course the first time you play it, like you're gonna die and you're gonna be like, you know, seeing that
yeah.
screen, and
It's pretty scary
it was
as like an
scary. It
8 year
loomed
old.
large. Yeah, yeah. How about you? Where were you?
I remember the first time that I saw Final Fight. It was in a 7-Eleven in Van Nuys, California.
Nice.
And my cousin, who's a little couple of years older than me, he was allowed to take me to the 7-Eleven down the street, just the two of us.
Hmm.
And it was sort of scary, you know? And they had a Final Fight game there, and I was able to play it. And sort of similar to you, that game blew my mind. I mean, it's so,
Yeah,
it's tough. You're a tough guy running around beating up guys. Like
it's
it
true.
felt, it kind of felt like you were in the game because you were in this scary 7-Eleven,
I mean, it's different. I feel like I felt very safe in the Sluggers Sports Bar Arcade, I'll have to say. But,
Yeah,
it probably is more fitting, right, to be playing it in a sketchball 7-Eleven, preferably like on the not so nice part of town or whatever, right?
yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah.
do you remember which character you were like drawn to of the three?
Absolutely. I mean, Hagar for sure.
I feel like that was me too. Like I definitely wasn't Guy, although I know Guy is like now I feel like I can appreciate Guy's character more. But that's my memory is that it was like Hagar getting in there with those like big, like, body shots, right? Like his punch.
Well, and his like silhouette is just so interesting too. So playing it today, what are some of your impressions? Like, let's start with the visual design.
Yeah. I mean, I think still today, I think the visuals hold up pretty well. I mean,
Yeah,
the
same.
player characters, especially, I would say the player characters and the bosses,
Yeah.
for the most part, hold up pretty well. The enemies, I think, are a little bit of a mixed bag, but like that's fine. I mean, they're just like kind of fodder, right?
I think what I have the same feeling that it looks great. And I think it's one of those cases where there might be limitations to the graphics, but with the limitations, they were able to capture something essential, or not essential, but they're able to capture a character really
Yeah.
well, especially Hagar, as we were just playing. His walk and his gait is so kind of
Yeah.
odd. He kind of shuffles along in this funny way. Like, you don't get the sense that he's actually very athletic, but he's just this strong, beefcakey, meathead, mean guy who's just gonna, kick your butt, and
It's
that's
true.
it.
The other two kind of have like a strut, like Guy and Cody both, right? It's like it's quite upright.
They're kind of
But
more
I
like
think like
Michael
Hagar is kind of like,
Jackson-ish or something, yeah.
yeah,
And like, yeah, Hagar is just like, you like,
yeah.
yeah. That's what really gets me. And yeah, the they were able to communicate something really strong with the little bit of technology. Um,
Yeah, definitely.
as far as the visual design goes, like, the setting is pretty vivid.
Yeah. No, I think they did a really nice job. After playing Final Fight, I mean, this is like how I was as a kid. It's like play the video game, then want to go and like act out the video game, you know. And when you live, so like growing up in the Chicago area, right? It's like, look, there's no shortage of like, you know, whatever like city scenes where you're just like, oh yeah, this is just like in Final Fight, you know. And so like that has a, you know, they definitely kind of tapped into that.
Yep. And then okay, so looking back now, looking through today's eyes, I guess, whatever, the game mechanics. What do you think about the game mechanics?
I think it's fair to say it broadly defines the genre, right? So in a way, it's like, yeah, so you're, you know, moving left to right through like kind of different parts of the city, you know, hitting barrels and boxes and getting pickups and things like that. So all of that stuff, I mean, you know, it just feels like classic beat 'em up, right? You know, I mean, and who hasn't been walking through the street and you see like an oil drum there and you're feeling a little bit hungry or weak, you know, you just like bust open the oil drum and there's like a big, you know, hunk of like, you know, there's like a big
a roast in there.
Yeah, a roast. There's a roast. And you know, you eat it, no question, and you feel better.
I've had that happens all the time in downtown LA.
Yeah.
No, you know, it's funny, like it's pretty simplistic in a way.
Yeah.
But it's fun.
No, definitely. It still works. I mean, I think especially like playing 2-player.
Yeah.
Like it's one of those things where, you know, the 1-player game, I think the fighting mechanics are like pretty solid. Like it's not all that varied, you know?
Yeah.
It seems like, you know, it's not that there aren't like tricks or whatever, right? But it's just, you know, you got to get the spacing right and the timing right for knowing what's coming and kind of knowing how to position yourself and all that stuff. But it's like, you know, with the multiplayer, it's definitely a lot more fun, right? There's sort of that, you know, in addition to just the fun of the co-op and bombing through with a friend, there's obviously just kind of more strategies that you can deploy with your spacing and stuff like that, right? Then in the single player, it's just like, you kind of, you know, if you're going to survive, you can't do it that way.
Yeah, I will say that something I forgot about until we just dipped back into it was the friendly fire. I completely forgot that was in there. And that's like, I mean, that's pretty dang fun to like,
I think it works.
Pop your friend real quick and, you know, kind of thing. It's fun.
It's not too punishing either, which I think that's a nice touch.
Yeah. I mean, you know, with our modern brains, it is easy to wish for one more like option or two.
Yeah. So I think one of the things that doesn't hold up all that well game mechanic wise is because there's kind of like a stickiness to it. And then like I really don't like the kind of invincibility frames or whatever they do with the bosses, right? The way that they kind of stand up and they're sort of upright, but you can't interact with them. You know, it's like, I don't know. There's all these little like things that like are, if it's fair to say, like cheap, you know?
Yeah.
They just sort of think like, all right, like, you know, these days, I think we can come up with better solutions there, right? Better ways to make it challenging without it kind of feeling like, okay, like why can't I hit him right now? Like it's not really clear.
Well, yeah, and that too, like, you know, one of the terms I think about and shout out to Worth a Buy is immersive.
Yeah.
And those kind of moments definitely break the immersion a little bit because like, I know, you know, we're fighting the wrestler dude or the, you know, the matador dude with like the swords and like, what am I supposed to do when he's bending down? Like that just, why? Yeah. It doesn't make sense in the world of the game. So yeah. Any thoughts about Final Fight and the feel?
Yeah. I mean, I think it feels pretty good. I guess I sort of gestured at this a little bit already. Like there's a stickiness to it. Like I think, you know, you can see, well, I think definitely, and we'll come to this in a second, you can really see the, you know, DNA that it shares with like Street Fighter, right? Just in terms of like the movement and the movement and responsiveness of the attacks, like that all feels really good. But yeah, there's just kind of like, it's not quite as fluid as you might want, right? Like when you play like the, you know, your Third Strikes, your Street Fighter 4, right? Or kind of the more refined fighting games, right? There's a really there's responsiveness there that feels really great. And so it would be great to have it feel as good as that rather than this kind of stickiness where you're kind of locked into this thing. You're like, oh God, no, just move, you know?
Yeah. I will say that as far as the feel goes, the hits are still satisfying.
Definitely.
I mean, and when you pull off that perfect, spiral kick as Cody, or the 360 kick. Is that a hurricane kick? Kinda, right?
Why not?
Yeah. Cody's hurricane kick. It is satisfying. You
Yeah.
do feel like you're actually doing some damage, but it's still, you're still wanting a little bit.
Yeah. It wasn't quite as refined yet, but again, that's looking back with our modern eyes, right? Like definitely at the time, like it felt,
Yeah.
as good as anything I'd played, I think.
Yeah, yeah. Let's move on to Street Fighter 2, another classic.
Yeah.
So Spencer, what is your memory of Street Fighter 2? When did you first see it? Yeah.
Yeah. I want to say first place I saw it was in a hotel arcade, maybe, or maybe it was like at an airport or some different restaurant. In any case, but I definitely remember like watching I think my parents didn't give me any money for it. And I had no money when I was that age. But I remember watching the demo on loop, and it's basically showing you like the matchups or whatever. And I think maybe, somebody came by and played it and it just looked like the most awesome thing ever, right? Because, I think at this point I had seen Final Fight, but when you see Street Fighter 2, I mean, it sort of looks, you can see the resemblance, right? It looks as cool as Final Fight did, but the characters are just like next level, right? Yeah. And they're doing moves that were just like throwing fireballs and and it's just like, whoa, like this is.
And the head-to-head thing is incredible.
Yeah. So yeah. But what about you? Where do you remember first seeing it?
I mean, it's hard to say, but so I think my first memory of Street Fighter 2 is from an arcade called Yellow Brick Road.
Nice.
That was next door to the movie theater where I grew up in Temecula. And this arcade was sort of like, verboten, like we cannot go there, do not go there, it's a bad place. There was even a rumor that someone had been shot there.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know if that was true or not, but I think that's what my mom told me. And anyway, we would sneak in, or we would go there after a movie, until my mom picked me up at 9, but the movie ended at 8, that type of thing. And I'll never forget, there was like a group of people around the game, and you would put your quarter on the little ridge.
Oh wow. Yeah.
You're like in line and you put your quarter up there, but I was too scared. I didn't actually play it. I was younger than the big kids. So, but it was like same awesome.
Yeah.
Just these moves, the lightning and all that sort of stuff. And these kids in their puffer jackets. I'll never forget. I was like, these kids are like, they're really bad. And, so Street Fighter 2, Yellow Brick Road. Awesome.
Yeah. Wow. You had the full experience too with like the queuing up to play. Like, I don't think I ever saw that.
Yep. I definitely saw that.
Very cool.
Okay. So when you look at Street Fighter 2 today, how does the visual design strike, do you think?
Yeah. I mean, it still looks good. No question. I mean, I think because we've seen so many more iterations, right, of those characters and kind of the look, there's ways in which it strangely kind of like looks more dated or something like this, right? Because it's like, oh yeah, I know what, like I've seen Street Fighter Alpha, I've seen Street Fighter 3 and 4, but with those two in particular, because they're still 2D and you kind of see the refinement, right? So it does kind of look older, but like it still looks good. I mean, I think it still holds up. What do you think?
No, I think the same. Like what's interesting again, and is I guess this is a Capcom thing, maybe, but the characters themselves are just so clearly defined.
Yeah.
As characters, it's like you could take Guile and do anything you want with him, and he's always Guile.
Yeah.
And you know exactly who that guy is without him doing anything. They're such well drawn characters. Like you even know their personality just when you look at them in a freeze frame, and that holds up so well. Okay, so then looking back now, how do the game mechanics of Street Fighter 2 strike you?
So I know that some of the times when we played like Street Fighter 5, we'll do like stripped down kind of like rules, right? Where we'll play like sweeps and throws, or just heavy punch and things like that with Guile. And there's a way in which that almost kind of feels more like Street Fighter 2, right? It's like, well, look, you don't have kind of all the options and tools, right? Or, or maybe I just don't have the skills. So that when I play it, it's this more kind of simplified version, but still really fun. Like, I mean, I think all the core is there as far as kind of like, spacing, deciding, kind of how you want to attack, how you want to get in, or, how you want to zone and that sort of thing. So, simplified, but I think, it still holds up. Yeah. What do you think?
No, yeah, no, I tend to agree. I mean, it's yeah, I think the game mechanics for Street Fighter 2, they hold up. They're still satisfying. You still get that, you kind of get that feeling you're reaching for in Final Fight
Yeah.
of, oh, I want to be able to do a little bit more and like do more damage and have more control over what I'm doing. But then it's funny because then there's still a feeling of wanting a little bit more out of Street Fighter 2.
Yeah.
It's not quite there yet, but that might just be now looking back, like you said. But yeah, I mean, it's still super satisfying. It's timeless in a way. You can go
Yeah.
back and play it and get a lot out of it. So moving on to our final question. So for Street Fighter 2, feel wise, how do you take that?
Yeah. I mean, I think it still feels good. I mean, in a way, maybe by contrast with like Final Fight and the beat 'em up, I mean, it seems like in the fighting genre, like feel and game mechanics are like somewhat like necessarily blended,
Yeah.
right? So I mean, I think it still feels good. I mean, again, it's like not as fluid to my hands, right?
Or
As
snappy, yeah.
some of the later iterations, but yeah, I mean, I will say like I actually like it better than Street Fighter Alpha, for example. Like when I play Street Fighter 2, I'm like it somehow feels more natural. Maybe that's just because I'm not used to Alpha.
Yeah.
But I think it still feels good. What about you? What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think the feel for Street Fighter 2 is great. It's a little slow feeling, a
Yeah.
little tiny bit sticky-ish. I revisited it a day or two ago, and but it's satisfying. It is responsive, and it's funny because a lot of these the feel, it feels very familiar. I don't know
Yeah.
about you, but it's like this game that I played so much when I was young, and then I get into it now, many, many years later, and it's like, oh my God, I remember exactly. Oh, oops, I did that same. Oh my God, that's how long that takes. It's this, the same
Yeah.
thing that it was, which is
Yeah.
the game never changes. We do.
It's true.
Yeah. All right. So we got Final Fight, we've got Street Fighter 2, we've got co-op, we've got competitive. Kind of an interesting thing there.
Yeah.
What do you prefer?
Yeah. I mean, I think this might be recency bias because just before we recorded this, we were playing Final Fight together.
Mm-hmm.
And we did have the experience of like, okay, I think we've played far enough. Let's stop. And then it was like, oh, well, we'll just beat this boss and then keep going. And there is a sense in which like the co-op, I feel like has that feeling to it in a way that competitive, I mean, the competitive can be certainly as addictive, right? But yeah, I don't know. There's something about just kind of like when you're just like brawling through the streets, right? It's just like, and it feels good. You just want to keep going. Whereas with the competitive, as exciting as it is, like, I mean, round after round, yeah, no, there comes a point where it's like, particularly if you're like just getting your ass kicked or whatever, it's just like, okay, I need to take a break.
That's true. That's true. That's true. I do remember a friend, I told you this story, but we were playing Mortal Kombat and he could not get the timing down for that game. He was very good at Street Fighter 2, but not good at Mortal Kombat.
Oh yeah.
Mortal Kombat has a whole other timing and everything.
Yeah.
He could not get it. And this is so terrible. This is actually quite traumatic memory, but he literally was losing. He finally threw the controller at my face.
Whoa.
And it hit me. Hit me pretty hard. And he went and stormed off. And, that doesn't happen in a co-op game.
No, not typically. That's right.
Yeah. Or with people who don't have anger issues at age like 11.
It was hard. I mean, right. I think like it's hard to manage those emotions because does get very intense in the competitive games.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess I agree. Like, I think playing a cooperative game, like with a friend or a group of friends, mobbing through the streets, beating up dudes, it's just like what games were made to be in a way.
Yeah.
And you're so, you're so it's just so satisfying, I guess. And you're not going to get into those moments that I described where you're, mad at each other or anything like that. You can just have, it's just pure fun.
Yeah.
All right. So like, let's talk a little bit about some like lessons we might be able to take away from these two classics for Future Strike. So Spencer, what are some lessons that we might be able to take away in your opinion?
Yeah. Well, I think the biggest one maybe is just the really strong character design. So I think that's, a huge part of like Final Fight, and then Street Fighter 2, even huger, right? It's just, I mean, those characters now are like larger than life in a way, right? Some of them at least, certainly. But it's so clear like how important that was, right? Just kind of capturing people's imagination in a way that like, Double Dragon or whatever, like great game, but it's just like the Lee brothers or whatever, it's just like, well, they're like palette swaps and like nobody cares, right? But the way that they really sort of, distinguish the characters in Final Fight and then refine that even more in Street Fighter, it's amazing. And like, that's something to aspire to, no question.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. And I think kind of building off of that, and I touched on this before, but building off of the character design is the sense of like the setting and the place.
Yeah.
And in a Final Fight game, it's clearly a contiguous kind of map that you're moving through linearly.
Yeah.
But I guess it's in Street Fighter 2 as well, you're bouncing around the globe.
Yeah, you're a world warrior going from place to place.
Yeah. And I mean that it feels, I would say Street Fighter 2, like it less feels like a continuous setting. You're kind of just from stage to stage to stage, but those stages are still so memorable.
No, that's right. I mean, it's not one place, right? It's many places, but it's clear that the stage design was a huge part of what they were trying to do. And they were trying to sort of capture the like different locations all around the world. Yeah, both of those I think are really, really important.
What else do you think?
Yeah, so I think the just get in and go nature of both of those games. I mean, obviously, because they were arcade games, like that was the whole kind of frame of the presentation, right? It's like, well, you put in your coin, you need to go, and if you're the arcade maker, you need turnover, right? So you're just kind of like trying to get people into it. But even from the player's perspective, there's something so satisfying about that, right? It's just like, get in there, insert your coin, press start, go play, right? It's not like, menu upon menu, loading screen upon loading screen, right? It's just like, oh, I'm going to play this game now. I made the decision, I'm playing. And I think that's really great.
Right. The barrier of entry, like quite literally, is nothing. It's just putting a quarter in and pushing the P1 button.
That's right. They had to really remove those barriers between I want to play, now I'm playing, right? And I think you can see it's like one of the things that's frustrating about some of the, modern games, right? It's just like, oh my God, it's going to take me 5 minutes to even like, get into a game. Get out of here.
And then I think too, like the challenge of these games, right?
Definitely.
Like they were not easy games.
No, that's right. I mean, I think again, with the arcade model in mind, the goal is to like eat people's quarters, right? Or cycle them through, right? And so that's part of where the challenge maybe comes from. But even so, I mean, I think, the games were not impossible, right? You sort of had to learn the system and then, you could make your quarter go a long way. And what's exciting about that, and another lesson I think to take forward, is just kind of thinking about like, you want there to be this challenge to the game, but that what extends the play is actually the player getting better, right? And so there's a sense of progression, a sense of learning, and really accomplishment, right? As somebody becomes a better player, but the game stays the same, right?
Yep. I think that just about wraps up our I guess we'll end abruptly. That wraps up our first influences episode where we talked about Final Fight, Street Fighter 2. Anybody who's watching, please do drop in the comments below some of your favorite memories about like these classic games. Where were you when you first saw Final Fight? Like, do you remember like that coin, cue on the Street Fighter 2 game? And what boss do you remember? Who was your main on Street Fighter 2? Anything? And which game do you enjoy more? Street Fighter 2, Final Fight?
Yeah.
Subscribe, like. Talk to you later.